Hello, everyone. Welcome to the kickoff of Sonoma County CareerFest. For the next 4 days, you'll have the opportunity to hear from local employers, explore future careers in Sonoma County, and work toward getting yourself a bit more career ready. So today, though, we are starting off CareerFest with a panel discussion, but whereas a lot of the other panel discussions that we will have this week are focused around learning about careers within a particular industry, this one is going to look a bit more broadly at what the world of work will look like for the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to discuss things like how COVID has changed many of the careers towards a mobile or remote work environment. We'll look at the skills needed to be successful in future careers. And lastly, we're going to try to kind of get ahead of the curve on some of the changes that we're seeing around advanced technology like automation, robotics, internet, cloud connectivity, and all that. So my name is Brandon Jewell. I'm with the Career Technical Education Foundation. I want to call out those who are running things in the background here. We have Tracy Batchelder from Santa Rosa High School and Elizabeth Arndt from Sonoma County Office of Education. Telly, also from Sonoma County Office of Education. Our panelists today, though, I want to introduce our panelists. We have Katie Greaves, Director of the Sonoma County Workforce Investment Board. We have Dan Voit, the CEO of Blentech Corporation, and Hamish, Senior Vice President of Keysight Technologies. Thank you all so much. Everybody who's here helping put this together, thank you so much. Before we do get started, though, I want the students to know that you are welcome to ask questions through the Q&A function, and we will try to get to those questions at the end. Tracy is going to be looking through and picking out a few select ones to ask our panelists at the end. And if your teacher is giving you credit for attending this, we will post a link at the end with an attendance form that you can fill out. Okay, so with all that out of the way, I want our panelists to give a little bit of an introduction about themselves. So Katie, I'm gonna ask you to start first. Could you briefly introduce yourself, give maybe like a 1-minute explanation of what the Workforce Investment Board does and what you do there in your role, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here. I will just say by means of a starter that I went to Santa Rosa High School, went to Santa Rosa Junior High, and then went on to UC Santa Cruz. So I am just very thrilled to be here with you today. As Brandon mentioned, I'm the director of the Workforce Investment Board, and we are embedded in the county government system. So we are part of the Human Services Department of the County of Sonoma. So we are actually a government organization. What the Workforce Investment Board does is essentially, essentially an employment services, a jobs program. So we serve individuals ranging in age from 14 years old all the way up until there is no cap in terms of how old or how young you have to be one of our participants. And essentially what we do is we use our resources that we get to pay for training, to pay for on-the-job training and other work-based learning, and to work with employers to essentially matchmake the job seekers with the employers. So if a business is facing layoffs, for example, which is something that we saw a lot with during COVID, we will work with the business to identify if there's any way that we can prevent those layoffs, and we will use our funding to do it. So all of our services are free. If they are going to have layoffs, we will work with the employees who are being affected by the layoffs and try and see if there's other training that they're interested in jobs that are not experiencing the same kind of instability. So we are really looking at the county economic development system sort of systemically, as opposed to being a business ourselves. And so again, we're just trying to support businesses and job seekers to be able to thrive in Sonoma County. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I love that your organization really has your finger on the pulse of the workforce needs of the county. So I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Next, Dan, do you mind talking about what Blentech is and then what you do there as a CEO?
Sure. So Blentech is based here in Santa Rosa. We design, engineer, manufacture, and automate large-scale industrial food production equipment. So it's very big stainless steel machines that do cooking and mixing, blending, things of that nature. Probably almost everyone on this call has eaten food off of a Blentech machine, probably within the last week, but definitely within the last month. So our machines are in operation around the world, and we've been in business for in excess of 35 years. I am CEO of the company, and so I think that means I do just about a little of everything, but try to provide technical direction to the company, operational direction, et cetera, et cetera.
Looks like you're frozen, Brandon.
I think he is frozen.
Yeah.
Hamish, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, I'll go ahead for sure. So my name is Hamish Gray. I'm a Senior Vice President at Keysight Technologies, where I've actually had the privilege of working for over 32 years. I actually joined the company back in 1989 as a summer intern in Edinburgh, Scotland. And after a number of countries, a number of different cities, I've now been based in Santa Rosa, California for the last 6 years or so. So for those of you who do not know Keysight, Keysight, we're a technology company, and essentially what we really do is we accelerate innovation to connect and secure the world. We deliver breakthrough solutions, trusted insights, really in electronic design and tests. To make that kind of more real for the audience, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about technologies such as 5G. You've heard of Internet of Things, or IoT, or electronic vehicles. All of these have electronic signals, and Keysight is playing a key role in enabling those technologies. To help you kind of just understand the size of Keysight a little bit, so Keysight, we have about 14,000 employees worldwide. We have about 2,000 based in Santa Rosa, and our annual revenue or sales is greater than 4 billion. That's with a B. So we're a very sizable worldwide international company, fortunate to be headquartered in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County. In terms of my responsibilities, my major responsibilities is actually responsible for mergers and acquisitions, where when we acquire companies, I'm essentially responsible for how we combine the two companies and get the best out of both companies moving forward. And then I'm also, another key role I play is corporate social responsibility for the company. Brandon, you're on mute this time.
So thank you very much. I apologize. My internet went out for a second, so I left and came back. But thank you for continuing with that question. I do appreciate that. My next question, though, is going to be, and this is going to be both for Dan and Hamish, and I'm thinking, Dan, maybe I'll ask you to start. But I'm wondering, how has the pandemic changed the way that your company expects to do business going forward? A lot of companies have changed to more working remotely or virtual means. And I'm curious about your company particularly and what it looks like.
Sure. Well, as a small company based in Santa Rosa and with a global customer base, we had already understood that it was going to be important to distribute or decentralize the way we work together as a team. So we had already been investing in moving the company's controlling software, our CRMs, the way we interact with sales activities, the PLMs, the way our engineers work together, our ERPs, the way our accountants work together. We'd already been moving those to cloud-based systems. So when the pandemic situation struck, we moved everyone to remote work that could, which was more than half of our company as the lockdowns began. It proved that we were able to do most of the things we needed to do quite effectively. And in the last year, it's caused us to, reassess where do we invest our money in terms of what. And we had multiple facilities here in town to have enough office space. And we're asking very simple questions of why spend money on offices when we can spend money on software and people, because it's the people that create the value. And so it's actually, we were getting prepped for this discussion. I joked about this, but this room was my office. It isn't anymore. It's now a flexible executive workspace or a flexible managerial workspace. So there used to be pictures of my kids and things on the wall. Those are all down, but it's decorated in a way that'll work for anyone, and it'll be flexible for anyone to check it out on the calendar and use it. What's interesting that we're coming to terms with and know is going to be important is when you have a remote work environment, accountability is very important. It requires a great deal of trust between the employee and the employer. And so we're developing ways of making sure that that's all in place there as well, because working from home still means working.
Mm-hmm. So Hamish, I'm wondering about Keysight. Keysight is a much larger company, but also headquartered here in Santa Rosa. And being technology based, how has the pandemic changed the way Keysight does business?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. It's a good question. I think how I've surprised some of this up to begin with is the pandemic itself has really not changed how Keysight expects to do business. Okay. I think what's important to understand is the digital transformation was already underway. It's been underway for many years. And the way I like to say it is, I think the pandemic has done one or two things. It's either accelerated that transformation, or secondly, woken companies up to what that digital transformation would be like. So because, of course, we're at the forefront of all of this new technology, essentially, we did have a very flexible working model already, right? So at the highest level, Keysight, we're essentially going to continue to operate just as we did prior to the pandemic, right? We'll be supporting both remote employees and also on-site workers in collaboration, okay? So it's not really going to change things. However, you've got to take learnings out of everything that occurs, right? So it's not that we had all the answers when we went into the pandemic. So we've definitely learned that there are more jobs that can be done more efficiently from home, okay? You heard Dan talk about a lot of the software, right? They're mainly a software company, right? Well, Keysight, we still have a big manufacturing operation. While we are a software solutions company, we still have incredible technology and a lot of hardware and instrumentation. When you're doing new product introductions and bringing those products to market, that on-site, in-person collaboration, R&D engineers working with production engineers, working with production techs is really critical. So really what the pandemic has done is accelerated that digital transformation and reconfirmed how important collaboration is. Collaboration either digitally or in person, okay? And from Keysight, we really believe that our culture is our competitive advantage, and a key part of that culture, especially part of that DNA, is really sharing and collaboration, working together. So we're going to continue very much like we have been doing, but just like you heard from Dan, a lot of our customers are going to be working remotely and working from home. So we've got to adjust as well, but the fundamental core of how we run our business is not going to be any different once we can have people back on our site in a more full scale way.
Yeah, so it sounds like so much of it really depends on what the role of that person is, and some can and some cannot be done remotely. I know even at the CT Foundation, working more of an office job, we've already had the discussion about what things will look like, sort of doing a hybrid of mix of work from home and working in the office. And also having a conversation with some other employers. There's one employer who's said something that I will always remember. He said, depending on the job, you used to have to be able to give a reason why you wanted to work from home. And going forward, you might have to give a reason why you need to go into work. So it's just a different change, but ultimately the hope is that the outcome of the work itself is the same, if not better. So Katie, I want to go to you, because not working at a company yourself, you work at the Workforce Investment Board, which works with other employers and job seekers, and you address workforce needs in Sonoma County. And with that broader and more regional scope, I'm hoping that you can give a sense of the kinds of changes that you expect to see in local careers over the next several years.
Sure. Yeah, I sometimes look at the role that we have as, we've got, however many businesses we have in Sonoma County. And I think about it as a chessboard almost, is that what our primary interest, our mission is that we have enough industry in Sonoma County to allow for the economic, vitality that we want for our community, and that we have enough access to opportunity, to economic opportunity, economic mobility, social mobility for the individuals who live in Sonoma County. And that comes in the form of being able to access good jobs, education for those good jobs. So we're really looking at the chessboard of all the various industries, and not all are equal, because from our perspective, we are, trying to be very forward thinking and thinking about where really are these opportunities that are, going to be anchored in our community long enough so that they can provide a career pathway for students and other job seekers. So with that lens, what we are always looking at is the data around what is our labor market information telling us as far as the kind of careers and jobs and industries that are going to sort of provide that landscape in Sonoma County. So in Sonoma County, we have what we consider our top 5 industries, the industries that are resilient enough to for us to be able to try and get our job seekers into those pipelines for those industries. They are healthcare, manufacturing, retail, construction, and accommodation and food service. So the pandemic has hit accommodation and food service the hardest out of all of those industries, and we don't know what that's going to mean for the economy moving forward for that industry. We're seeing lots of signs of life, but those are the kinds of things that we look at so that we then drill down into the actual jobs within those industries. Because what we want to know is there a future for this occupation before we have someone go into a training, which might be a multi-year training pathway. So looking ahead, I'm just going to say a couple things about some of those industries. But before I do, I want to just give a little bit of context. Sonoma County is part of a 6-county region. We're part of a North Bay region. So we also look at industry from a regional perspective. The 5 industries that I just mentioned are prevalent across the region, but once you look regionally, there's actually a pharmaceutical manufacturing focus area within manufacturing that pops up that's not prevalent in Sonoma County, but it's prevalent in our region. So within those regions, interestingly, the most in-demand occupation in our region for the next 3 years is a personal care aides, which are individuals who are working primarily with the elderly, and as we look into the future, as our demographic shift and we have more older adults, and Sonoma County actually has a high prevalence of older adults. That is a very underfilled. It has more demand than it has supply. Unfortunately, that's not a high wage job. So that's the first of many conundrums for Sonoma County around the cost of living and the industry. So, there's a number of different occupations I could go into for manufacturing, packaging, and filling. Machine operators is actually one of the biggest in-demand occupation within beverage manufacturing. As I mentioned, pharmaceutical and medicine manufacturing, and then fruit and vegetable preserving. So what we do is take all that labor market information and try and find training opportunities and employers ready to hire within those specific occupations and industries. With the federal legislation of America's Jobs Act, we also are going to have an influx of funding for construction jobs that are the range of the building and trades, as well as for improvements to water, electric, and broadband systems, and incentivizing manufacturing facilities. And then, of course, I have to just mention, and I know I'm out of time, but wildfire prevention also continues to be an in-demand, localized industry need or occupation need in order to manage forests so that we don't have the wildfire disasters that we have been having. So there's a lot to cover, but there's a little snapshot.
Yeah, thank you. I think you really put in perspective how unique our local area is, right? Because of our high tourism industry, that changes the jobs. Because of it's sad to say, but our frequent fires, that sort of changes our need for, say, fire suppression as well as construction, right? To rebuild our community. So we do have a unique situation here in Sonoma County. I want to move over away from the kinds of jobs, but more into the types of skills that a student would need in order to be successful. And I know this is sort of a broad question, so I'm assuming that we'll focus a little bit more on what are called soft skills, right? The employability skills. But I'd like to take a look at what kind of skills are some of the most useful for the careers that our students are jumping into now and into the future. Hamish, do you mind starting us out on that, like specifically coming from Keysight too? I'm sure you have a good idea of the kinds of skills one would need in order to succeed.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. So I go back to the work that was done a couple of years ago, right? The portrait of a graduate in Sonoma County. I think that a lot of those skills that were listed in there are absolutely critical for any job, frankly. If I put on my Keysight bias hat with technology, etc., you heard me talk about the importance of collaboration, regardless if it's over digital platforms or in person, right? We fundamentally believe that graduates need to have that ability to collaborate, because you get more breakthrough innovations and from technology, etc., with really good collaboration. Okay. The other thing too, frankly, is curiosity, right? Really asking questions, digging in. That's how you get continuous improvement. That's how you get advances, not accepting that how we do things today is the only way or the best way. So they would be a couple of things if I just think more from a technology point of view. But I think overall that portrait of a graduate, everyone should have that, should just nail all of those skills.
Thank you. Dan, what about you? Were there some particular skills that you think stand out to you as a CEO of Blentech, or what you'd be looking for?
Sure. Well, from my perspective, that one of the most critical things to consider is that the pace of change is accelerating as the technologies that we're learning to use are being brought into business at a faster and faster pace. So when you extrapolate that out, what that means for people entering the workforce is they have to have good problem solving skills, and they have to be very flexible. New technologies create new opportunities, but they also create new problems to work through. And so maintaining that right mindset about solving problems as they come and being flexible allows people to stay ahead of that curve and be part of the technological adoption, which at the end of the day is what the businesses want to pay for.
Yeah, I could see that. Students are getting a crash course in flexibility right now, and have been for the past year, with having to switch to distance learning and all that. And that's not easy. And industry did the same thing. So the skills that the students learned there can easily be transferred over to something like the work world. Katie, how about you from that broader perspective? What are you seeing as some of the top skills?
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a echo chamber in here, but I would say it's really, for me, a combination of skills and attributes. As an employer myself, I am looking first for a good fit with my organization from a value standpoint. Believing in the mission and vision is absolutely central to having a good experience and being successful in my organization. The most important attribute skill combo would be, for me, the trifecta of communication, courage, and curiosity, all three of those coming to bear at the same time. To be able to be brave enough to raise questions and suggest ideas, and then to also engage in critical feedback. The second and third qualities for me, which are enhanced by practice and skill building, are initiative and flexibility, to be able to visualize the end product and be able to take steps towards that end, whether the end product is actually some interaction even with another human being rather than necessarily a product, but also to be able to shift gears when things suddenly change. That's an ideal array of skills and attributes for me is again, that communication, curiosity, courage, initiative, and flexibility. In my organization, I'll just say, just to end off, we have a very, what I call polite culture. So it's very nice. Everybody's very, very, very nice to each other. And on one hand, that's wonderful because everybody cares about one another. But another area where we really are trying to develop is in that ability to challenge one another and to be able to say, hey, you know, is this really going to get us to where we're trying to go? And what other things is another way for us to do it without feeling like we're hurting someone's feelings?
Yeah, that's really good. Dan, my next question is going to be for you. I want to switch away from, I guess, a little bit less on the broad skills, but really kind of talk about this big change that we're seeing. Even before COVID, our society has been going through a change that is often referred to as the fourth industrial revolution. You and I did another virtual activity back in, I think it was December, where we really focused on this. But I wanted to touch on it here because I think it's important. Can you explain what that fourth industrial revolution means and how students can start to prepare to get ahead of the curve on the kinds of changes that we should expect from that?
Sure. Well, the fourth industrial revolution is really the expansion of connectivity and automation, expanding the internet to everything, which is why they call it the Internet of Things. So in our day-to-day lives, we see that in the form of our smartwatch, or our smartwatch and our phone connecting, but it's so much broader than that. The number of IP addresses on the internet exceeds the number of people on planet Earth, which I guess shouldn't be surprising when you really do begin to think about it. What that fourth industrial revolution means is, as far as humanity and the jobs that we have, everything is changing as significantly as it did in the industrial revolution from years past that we read about in the history books. It's a big deal. What does it mean in practice for us? We're going to have access to nearly endless amounts of information and data. And one of the critical things that a person can do to optimize their career or develop their career is get very good at turning that data into actionable information, understanding how to use it and how to make decisions. Because just because you can get the information doesn't mean it's worthwhile. And so figuring out what's worth it, what isn't, and cutting through the noise to develop a path and be decisive is something that is going to be of huge value.
Okay, thank you. I think there's something really intriguing for me about this idea of us going through a revolution. Sometimes you don't see it because you're in the middle of it, but if you were to kind of scroll back, it really shows how quickly technology is advancing right now and how important it is to just have that ability to change with it. And not be left behind with it. So I think that was a really good piece of advice that you were giving, Dan, but I want to move over to Hamish and Katie. Katie, I'll go to you first. I'm hoping that maybe you can give, not necessarily connected to this fourth industrial revolution, but any sort of advice to the students that are watching this as they kind of start to explore careers and enter this rapidly changing workforce.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're entering the rapidly changing workforce at a really great time. Prior to the pandemic, the demand for you exceeded how many of you, and that you were there. It exceeded. So you really, the world is your oyster at this point. There are, I expect that this supply demand, that there will be more jobs available, more good jobs available than there are people to fill them. So this means that, with a sense of purpose, some access to resources like the CTE classes that, you're enrolled in and your support system, and maybe a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit really you really have your choice. There's choice ahead of you. So my advice to you is to dream big, because you won't need to settle. If you can find a paid internship or apprenticeship in any field, take it. If company values are important to you, seek out jobs with employers that are aligned with your values. Your lifelong learning and growth is essential, so look for companies that have career pathways and opportunities for advancement. You'll have to start at the beginning, of course, as we all did. So stay humble and curious, but bring your passion, your intellect, and your heart into the work world, because your employer will really appreciate that. And so I just say, really, you have nothing to lose at this point, except to just bring yourself. That would be my advice.
Thank you. I think that's great advice. Hamish, we'll end with the advice from you.
Well, pretty hard to follow that from Katie. It was pretty right on the money as far as I'm concerned. So maybe not to repeat everything that Katie said, but I think you've got to definitely put on this mentality of just embracing this new world. Okay, don't see things as problems; they're just opportunities out there to be taken advantage of. Okay, I think that's important. And probably the biggest thing right now is, I say, just be bold, right? This is not the time to be shy. Okay, be bold. And something to remember is that the good news for students and graduates entering the job market is you've just been through a very testing year. You've shown flexibility, how to work in this new world, right? You've experienced it. You've actually led it in many ways, taken an industry of teaching as an example and trying to convert it to a digital platform. And so it's important that you'll have a lot of opportunities you can take advantage of. And even though I know Katie focused on the 5 industries in Sonoma County, remember as well that with a lot of companies move into supporting more work at home, don't limit yourself to the thought that those are only the 5 industries. You can find jobs literally in any industry and still be located in Sonoma County if you want to do that. Now, of course, on the flip side, there'll be more competition for jobs because potentially someone in another county or another state may be looking to see a job in Sonoma County that can be done remotely. But I see this all as opportunities opening up for graduate students coming into this marketplace. It's a great time. The demand is just skyrocketed. I mean, it was already demand outstripped supply prior to the pandemic. It's even more so today. It's a great time.
Great. Thank you so much, Hamish. Tracy, I'm going to ask you to maybe join us. I know you've been monitoring some of the questions. And is there any of the questions that I know we're running low on time, but is there any of the questions that you want to put ahead of the pack and ask of the panelists?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to go back to what Hamish mentioned about the portrait of a graduate. And I did put that in the chat for participants if you're interested in looking at that. But there was a question about, is resourcefulness a good trait for jobs such as yours? And this question was in particular for Hamish, but also Katie. And, I think just, one thing to keep in mind for these students is that, during this time of COVID, you've had to use all kinds of new soft skills. And maybe Hamish can talk about that a little bit and how that might transfer to a job at somewhere like Keysight.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, the resourcefulness, I can link that a little bit to showing initiative and curiosity. I can actually tell you that a number of platforms that we ended up implemented during this COVID time or using during this COVID time is because someone's parents saw their children using it. Okay, and it was like, what is that, right? And the children would explain what it was, and we're now using some of those collaboration platforms as a key part of the work. So I think that's a good example of absolutely resourcefulness is really important. Initiative, curiosity, they're all critical, and that type of skill can be applied in any job, right? In any role that you do, you should always be looking for how to do it better, right? You should never accept status quo in anything you're doing. So good question, and really important skill.
Yeah, do we have time for one more, Brandon?
I think we have time for one more. Yeah.
Okay, there's another interesting question about, this student heard that different hobbies or passions can play into other job fields that you might not even think about, how they might apply. Maybe Dan, you could talk a little bit about that, about how you can use your passions and hobbies and kind of parlay that into a component of your job, or how it might help you in a job.
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, I 100% agree with that. And I think that at the end of the day, it's really about finding a purpose or a calling, something that really speaks to you as an individual, what drives and motivates you. For me personally, I always liked cooking a lot. I like to cook for my family, like to cook for my friends. I thought about working in a restaurant, but I really also like my time off on the weekends, and that's when people tend to go to restaurants. So I studied food science in college. And food science led me to working in a food equipment manufacturing company where I can consult and advise to people who want to cook on an industrial scale. And so as I think about the things I enjoy cooking, I learn in the kitchen at home things that I can take to the workplace. And I have many, many stories where basic learnings from a recipe at home translated out into significant savings for an industrial food production company. So if you're flexible and you're open-minded about how to bring your passions and your purpose into your job, in terms of being not too rigid about that thought process, and then also linking that, of course, to the fact that more information through Industry 4, IoT Industry 4.0 stuff, the fourth industrial revolution. If you have that passion, you can help people understand how to do different things, how to use information. So completely agree.
Great.
Great, thank you. And I see that Katie was answering another question via just typing it into the Q&A. So I'd recommend students take a look at some of that. If you have more questions or we didn't get to answer your questions, we might have typed it in. Lastly, I think before we end, Tracy, did you want to add the that form into the chat so that students can say they were here in case their teachers are requiring that?
Sure, I'll do that right now.
Great, thank you so much. So I want to say thank you to our panelists, Hamish, Katie, Dan. I really appreciate you being with us. Thanks to Elizabeth and Chris from SoCo working things in the background, and Tracy, thank you for monitoring the Q&A and all that. I want to let all the students who are watching this know that this is just the first of a whole week of Sonoma County Career Fest, where you're going to be getting panels and workshops to really help you explore careers and get career ready. So I would highly, highly recommend checking out more than just this one. We really appreciate you jumping in on the very first one and hearing about the future of careers. But take a look at the webpage and the schedule and tune into more, because there's going to be some really good information that would be really helpful for you as you start to explore careers in your future. So, all right, thank you everyone. We really appreciate your time.